The shuttle landed without a sound on the Academy's main platform. Students from a dozen different worlds gathered near the windows to watch. Some floated in zero-gravity bubbles. Others stood on legs that bent in strange directions. A few had no legs at all. They all wanted to see the human. Kira Chen stepped off the shuttle with a small bag over her shoulder. She was shorter than most of them expected. Her skin was a warm brown color, and her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie. She wore the standard Academy uniform, gray and plain, and she kept her eyes on the ground as she walked. The whispers started immediately. "That is her, the Deathworlder. She looks so small, I thought they were giants. Do not let her size fool you. My instructor said humans can run for hours without stopping. They chase their prey until it dies from exhaustion." Kira heard every word. Human ears were good at picking up sounds, even quiet ones. But she did not react. She had practiced this. For 6 months before coming here, she had practiced staying calm when people talked about her like she was a monster. The Academy of Interspecies Relations was the most famous school in the galaxy. Students came from everywhere to learn how to work with other species. Diplomats, traders, scientists, they all trained here. Getting accepted was almost impossible. Getting accepted as a human was a miracle. Earth had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago. In that time, humans had earned a reputation. Their planet was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, one of the most dangerous places in known space. The gravity was crushing. The star that warmed it also sent deadly radiation. The air was full of tiny organisms that could kill most species in days. And the animals were nightmares given flesh. But the humans were the worst part. They had not evolved to run from danger. They had evolved to hunt it down and kill it. Kira walked through the Academy's main hall, following the signs to the registration office. The walls were made of a crystal that changed color as she passed. The floor adjusted to support different body types. Everything was designed to make every species comfortable. Everything except Kira. The air was too thin for her. The lighting was too dim. The temperature was set for species that did not generate their own body heat, so she felt cold all the time. But she did not complain. She just pulled her uniform tighter and kept walking. At the registration desk, a Velari official looked up at her with compound eyes that reflected her image 1,000 times. The Velari were beautiful creatures, with wings like stained glass and bodies as thin as paper. They came from a low-gravity world where the wind could carry them for miles. "Name?" the official asked. His voice was like wind chimes. "Kira Chen from Earth." The official's wings twitched. He checked his screen 3 times before printing her student identification card. "Your room is in Section 7. Your advisor is Instructor Vethcon. Do you require a pressure suit or breathing apparatus?" "No, I can breathe the standard atmosphere." The official looked at her with something that might have been surprise or might have been fear. "You can survive in normal air." "Yes." "Without assistance?" "Yes." The official handed over her card like it might bite him. Kira thanked him politely and walked away. Her room was small but private. The Academy had decided that humans should not share living spaces with other species, at least not yet. Kira did not mind. It meant she had somewhere to go when everything became too much. She sat on the bed, which was too soft, designed for species with delicate bones, and allowed herself one moment of weakness. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating too fast. She wanted to go home so badly that it felt like a physical pain in her chest. But she could not go home. She was here to prove something, to show the galaxy that humans were not the monsters everyone believed them to be. She took a deep breath and started unpacking. The next morning, Kira attended her first class. The room was shaped like a bowl, with seats arranged in circles that got higher as they went back. Students of every shape and size filled the space. Kira chose a seat near the door, at the very edge of the room. Instructor Vethkon stood at the center. He was a Taurun, a species known for their diplomatic skills. His body was like a tree trunk with 4 arms and a face that seemed carved from wood. When he spoke, his voice was deep and calm. Welcome to Introduction to Interspecies Communication. In this class, you will learn how to understand species that are nothing like you. You will learn their languages, their customs, their ways of thinking. This is not easy. It requires patience, humility, and a willingness to accept that your way is not the only way. His eyes moved across the room and stopped on Kira. Some of you come from worlds of ice, some from worlds of fire, some from worlds where the air is poison and the water is acid. He paused. And some from worlds where simply surviving is an act of violence. Kira felt every eye in the room turn toward her. She kept her face still. In this class we do not judge, we learn. That is the only rule. After class, Kira walked to the dining hall alone. She had brought her own food, processed protein bars that would not offend anyone's dietary restrictions. Eating meat was considered barbaric by most species. Eating anything that had once been alive was disturbing to many. So Kira ate her gray, tasteless bars and tried not to think about real food. A shadow fell across her table. She looked up to see a Silthari standing over her. His scales were a deep blue that shifted to purple in the light. His eyes were gold, and they looked at her the way someone might look at an insect. "So you are the human," he said, "the famous Deathworlder." "Yes," Kira said, "I am Kira. I am Dresic. My father sits on the Hegemony Council. He voted against allowing your kind into the academy." He smiled, showing teeth that were sharp but decorative. Silthari were not predators. They had evolved those teeth for display. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Kira said nothing. Dresic leaned closer. "You do not look dangerous. You look like something I could break with one hand." Kira looked at his hand, then at his face. She knew exactly how to break every bone in his body. She knew which nerve clusters would cause the most pain. She knew how to kill him in 4 different ways before he could even scream. Instead, she smiled politely. "It is nice to meet you, Dresic." She went back to eating her protein bar. Dresic stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, short and sharp, and walked away. Kira's hands were steady. Her face was calm. Inside, something ancient and terrible waited in silence. The weeks passed slowly. Kira learned the rhythms of the academy. She woke before dawn to exercise in her room, doing push-ups and stretches that would have broken the bones of most other species. She attended classes where she sat quietly and took notes. She ate alone. She studied alone. She existed in a bubble of silence that no one tried to enter. Dresic did not forget about her. It started small. A comment here, a look there. In class, he would ask questions that forced the instructor to talk about Deathworlds. He would describe the horrors of Earth, the diseases, the predators, the endless violence, and then turn to look at Kira with innocent eyes. "Is it true that humans eat the bodies of dead animals?" he asked one day. The class went silent. Kira felt the weight of their stares. "Yes," she said, "we are omnivores. We eat both plants and animals." "And you cook them. You burn their flesh over fire." "Yes." A Velari student made a sound of disgust. A Koreth's bioluminescent patches flickered with distress. Dresic smiled. "How barbaric," he said. Kira did not respond. She had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. Another day, Dresic bumped into her in the corridor. Her food containers fell to the floor, spilling protein bars everywhere. Students stopped to watch. "Oh, I am so sorry," Dresic said. His voice dripped with false concern. "I did not see you there. You are so small, like a little animal." Kira bent down to pick up her food. "It is okay. Accidents happen." "Do they?" Dresic stepped on one of the protein bars, crushing it under his foot. "On your world, I hear there are no accidents. Only predators and prey. Which one are you, little human?" Kira looked at the crushed food. Then she looked up at Dressic with eyes that showed nothing at all. "Thank you for your concern," she said. "I hope you have a nice day." She picked up what she could and walked away. Dressic's friends laughed behind her. She heard them calling her names: pet, animal, primitive. She kept walking. In her room that night, she did not cry. Crying was a weakness she could not afford. Instead, she did push-ups until her arms burned, and sit-ups until her stomach screamed, and ran in place until her lungs felt like fire. Then she sat in the darkness and practiced breathing. In, out, slow and steady. The rage was always there, just below the surface. The instinct to fight, to defend, to destroy anything that threatened her. Millions of years of evolution had built that rage into her bones. Every cell in her body screamed at her to show Dressic what a Deathworlder could really do. But she could not, she would not. She was here to prove that humans could be peaceful, that they could live among other species without violence. Every time she walked away from Dressic, every time she swallowed her pride and stayed calm, she was fighting for the future of her entire world. It was the hardest battle she had ever fought. Instructor Vethkan watched all of this with growing concern. He had seen bullying before. It was common when species mixed for the first time. But this was different. Dressic was not just testing boundaries. He was hunting. Vethkan called Dressic into his office one afternoon. The Silthari sat across from him, with the confident posture of someone who had never faced real consequences. "I have noticed your interactions with the human student," Vethkan said. Dressic shrugged. "I'm just curious about her. We all are." "Your curiosity looks very much like harassment." "I would never." Dressic placed a hand over his chest. "My father would be very disappointed to hear you accuse me of such behavior. He might even feel compelled to contact the Academy board." Vethkan felt cold. He knew what that threat meant. Dressic's father was powerful, and the Academy depended on funding from the Hegemony Council. "I am only asking you to be kind," Vethkan said carefully. "All students deserve respect." "Of course," Dressic smiled. "I have nothing but respect for our little human friend." After Dressic left, Vethkan sat alone in his office for a long time. He pulled up Kira's file and read it again. Her test scores were excellent. Her psychological evaluations showed remarkable self-control, but there was a note at the bottom, flagged in red. "Warning: subject has completed standard Deathworld defense training. In situations of extreme threat, subject may default to survival protocols. Exercise caution." Vethkan did not know exactly what survival protocols meant, but he had studied humans enough to guess. He tried to request additional security for the human student. His request was denied. He tried to schedule a meeting with the Security Council. His meeting was delayed indefinitely. He tried to contact the human embassy. They sent a representative. The representative was a man named Tors. He was tall and thick with muscle, and his face was covered in scars. He moved through the academy like a predator moving through a field of prey, not hunting, but always aware of exactly where everyone was. Vethkan watched from a distance as Tors found Kira in the library. They spoke in their own language, fast and quiet. Kira shook her head several times. Tors seemed to be arguing with her. Finally, she shook her head one last time, hard and final. Tors sighed. He put a hand on her shoulder, said something soft, and walked away. Later, Vethkan found Kira alone at her usual table. She was staring at nothing. "Are you all right?" he asked. She looked up at him. For just a moment he saw something in her eyes, not anger, not fear, but a terrible weariness. The exhaustion of someone fighting a battle that never ended. "I am fine," she said. "Thank you for asking. If you need help." "I know." She attempted a smile. It did not reach her eyes. "I know you are trying. It means a lot." Vethkan wanted to say more. He wanted to promise that he would protect her, that he would make Dresic stop, that everything would be okay. But he could not make those promises. The Academy had made that very clear. "Be careful," he said instead, "please." Kira nodded. "I always am." That night Dresic gathered his friends in his private quarters. There were 6 of them, Silthari, Korath, even a Mhori who floated in the corner inside his pressure suit. They were all from wealthy families. They had all grown up being told they were special. "The human embarrassed me today," Dresic said. He was packing back and forth, his scales shifting from blue to angry red. "She looked at me like I was nothing, like I was beneath her." "She is just a primitive," one of his friends said. "Who cares what she thinks?" "I care." Dresic stopped packing. "Everyone is watching her. Everyone is waiting to see what she will do. If I let her disrespect me, what does that say about my family, about my father?" The room was quiet. "The celestial conjunction is next week," Dresic continued. "All the instructors will be at the ceremony. The academy will be almost empty." He smiled, and this time there was nothing friendly in it. "I think it is time we taught our little human friend a lesson." His friends exchanged looks. Some of them seemed uncertain, but no one said no. Across the academy in her small room, Kira lay awake in the darkness. She could feel something coming. She did not know what, but her body knew. Her instincts knew. Something was going to happen. And she was not sure she could stop herself from responding. The night of the celestial conjunction was beautiful. 3 moons aligned in the purple sky, casting silver light across the academy grounds. Most of the students and all of the instructors gathered at the grand observatory to watch. It was a celebration that happened only once every 50 years. Kira did not go. She told herself it was because she had studying to do. Her exams were coming up and she needed to maintain her perfect scores. But the truth was simpler. Crowds made her nervous. Too many bodies, too many sudden movements, too many opportunities for something to go wrong. So she went to the xenobotany greenhouse instead. The greenhouse was her favorite place in the academy. It was quiet and warm, filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Some of them glowed with soft light. Others moved slowly, reaching toward her like curious animals. The air smelled like earth and growing things, and for a moment Kira could almost pretend she was home. She found a bench near the back and opened her datapad. The dome above showed the conjunction in all its glory, 3 moons lined up like pearls on a string. She allowed herself to look at it for just a moment before turning back to her studies. She did not hear them coming. The door opened behind her. She turned to see 7 figures entering the greenhouse. Dresic was in front. Behind him came his friends, Skeel the Korath, 2 more Silthari, and 3 others she did not recognize well. Kira stood slowly. Her datapad fell forgotten to the bench. "Hello, little human," Dresic said. His scales were dark purple in the moonlight. "Studying alone, on the most beautiful night of the century." "I have exams," Kira said. Her voice was steady. "I should get back to my work." She tried to walk toward the door. Skeel moved to block her path. His bioluminescent patches flickered with excitement. "We are not done talking," Dresic said. "We came all this way just to see you. It would be rude to leave so soon." Kira looked at the door. She looked at the 7 of them, spread out to surround her. She felt her heart begin to beat faster. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to understand something." Dresic walked closer. His friends moved with him, tightening the circle. "You do not belong here. Your kind does not belong anywhere near civilized species. You are animals, dangerous, disgusting animals that should have been left on your poisonous little world to eat each other." Kira said nothing. "But since the academy was foolish enough to let you in, someone needs to teach you your place." Dresic was close now, close enough that she could smell him, something like copper and rotting flowers. "Someone needs to show you what happens to animals that forget they are prey." Behind her, she heard a sharp clicking sound. The door seals engaged. Skeel had used his bioelectricity to lock them in. Kira's hands began to shake. "Please do not do this," she said. They laughed. All 7 of them laughed, and the sound echoed off the glass dome above. "It speaks," one of the Solthari said. "The animal is begging." "Of course it begs," Dresic said. "That is what prey does. It begs and it runs, and in the end it dies." He reached out with one clawed hand. "Let us see how long it takes for you to." He never finished the sentence. Kira moved. Later, the security committee would watch the footage 43 times. They would slow it down, frame by frame, trying to understand what happened. They would bring in experts on human physiology, on combat techniques, on the psychology of violence. None of them could fully explain what they saw. Kira caught Dresic's reaching arm and twisted. The motion was smooth and fast, like water flowing downhill. His body followed his arm, spinning through the air until his face met the planting table with a crack that made the recording shake. Skeel discharged his bioelectricity, a bolt of blue lightning that should have stunned her. But she was not where she had been. She was inside his reach, her elbow driving into the nerve cluster behind his breathing membrane. He collapsed without a sound. The others tried to run. The door was still sealed. They tried to fight. They had never learned how. One Solthari swung at her with his claws. She ducked under the blow, grabbed his leg, and used his own momentum to throw him into his friend. They went down in a tangle of limbs and scales. The Mhori tried to expand, filling the space with his gaseous body to overwhelm her. She grabbed a gardening tool and punctured his pressure suit. He shrieked and collapsed inward, struggling to contain himself. The last 2 ran toward the emergency exit. Kira caught up to them in 3 steps. 2 strikes, precise and terrible, and they fell. 7 seconds. It took 7 seconds from the moment Dresic touched her to the moment the last body hit the ground. The greenhouse was silent. Kira stood in the center of the destruction, her chest heaving, her hair fallen loose around her face. The moonlight caught the sweat on her skin and made it shine like silver. She looked at her hands. They were not shaking anymore. They were perfectly steady, perfectly controlled, perfectly ready to continue. And then the adrenaline faded, and she saw what she had done. Dresic was unconscious, his arm bent at a wrong angle. Skeel was breathing, but barely, his membrane fluttering weakly. The others were scattered across the floor like broken toys. She had hurt them. She had hurt them badly. Not badly enough to kill. Some distant part of her mind had made sure of that, but badly enough. Kira fell to her knees. Her hands began to shake again, so hard that she could not control them. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and fast. "I asked you to stop," she whispered. Her voice was broken, nothing like the cold, efficient thing she had become moments ago. "I asked you please. Why did you not stop?" The emergency alarm triggered. Red lights began to flash. Somewhere in the distance, security drones powered up and began moving toward the greenhouse. Kira did not move. She stayed on her knees among the fallen bodies of her attackers, crying in the silver moonlight, waiting for someone to come and tell her that everything she had worked for was over. She had come to prove that humans were not monsters. She had failed. The plants around her swayed gently, disturbed by the violence that had passed through their home. One of them, a small flowering thing from a distant world, reached out and touched her shoulder. It was a gentle touch, curious and unafraid. Kira looked at it through her tears. For just a moment, she wondered what it must be like to be a plant, to simply exist, without the weight of evolution telling you to fight, to kill, to survive at any cost. Then the security drones arrived, and the wondering stopped. Instructor Vethkon was watching the conjunction when his communicator began to scream. The emergency alert cut through the peaceful night like a knife. Red text scrolled across his screen. Violent incident, xenobotany greenhouse, multiple casualties, human student involved. He ran. The ceremony hall was crowded, and he had to push through bodies of every size and shape. Some of them called out to him, asking what was wrong. He did not stop to answer. His hearts, both of them, pounded in his chest as he sprinted through the academy's corridors. 18 minutes. That was how long it took him to reach the greenhouse. 18 minutes of running, of commandeering transport pods, of cursing the academy's sprawling design. By the time he arrived, the medical teams were already there. The scene was chaos. Security drones circled overhead, their lights flashing. Medical personnel rushed back and forth, loading injured students onto hovering stretchers. A Velari doctor was working on Skeel, pumping air into his damaged breathing membrane. Dresic was conscious but moaning, his arm wrapped in an emergency splint. Vethkan pushed through the crowd until he found the lead security officer. "What happened?" he demanded. The officer, a Korath with dull orange patches, shook his head. "We are still trying to understand. The human student was in the greenhouse. 7 others entered. The door was sealed from inside. And then," he gestured at the carnage around them. "Where is she? Where is Kira?" The officer pointed toward the back of the greenhouse. "Over there. The human representative is with her." Vethkan found Kira in the corner, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled up to her chest. Tors knelt beside her, speaking in their language. His voice was low and steady, like someone calming a frightened animal. Kira looked up when Vethkan approached. Her face was wet with tears. Her eyes were red and swollen. "I tried to stop them," she said, her voice cracked on every word. "I asked them to stop. I did not want to hurt anyone. I never wanted." "I know," Vethkan said. He lowered himself to her level, moving slowly, keeping his hands where she could see them. "I know you did not want this." Tors looked at him with hard eyes. "Where were you?" he asked. "Where was security? Where was anyone who could have prevented this?" "I tried," Vethkan said. "I filed reports. I requested protection. No one would listen." "No one ever listens." Tor's voice was bitter. "Not until something like this happens, and then they blame the human." Vethkan did not argue. He could not. A medical officer approached, a Velari whose wings trembled with stress. "The injured students will survive," she reported. "The Korath has a partially collapsed breathing membrane, but we stabilized him. The Silthari leader has multiple fractures. The others have various injuries, none life-threatening." "She could have killed them," Tors said quietly. "Do you understand that? Any one of them she could have killed in a heartbeat. She chose not to." The medical officer looked at Kira with something that might have been fear or might have been awe. The force was precise, targeted, non-lethal. She paused. "I have never seen anything like it." Vethkan thought about what he knew of humans. They were persistent hunters, evolved to chase prey across miles of open ground until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies were designed for endurance, their minds for strategy. They had conquered their death world not through strength or speed, but through patience and coordination. And through the ability to turn off their mercy when survival demanded it. "What happens now?" Kira asked. Her voice was small. "There will be an investigation," Vethkan said. "A hearing. They will review the evidence and decide what to do." "They will expel me." It was not a question. "We do not know that yet." "They will." Kira closed her eyes. "I came here to prove we are not monsters, and now they have all the proof they need that we are." Tors put his hand on her shoulder. "You defended yourself. That is not monstrous." "They do not see it that way." Kira opened her eyes and looked at the injured students being carried away. "They see a Deathworlder who attacked 7 innocent people. That is all they will ever see." The security officer approached with a datapad. "We need to take the human to a holding cell while we investigate." Tors stood up so fast that the officer stumbled backward. "You will not put her in a cell. It is standard procedure. She is the victim here." Tor's voice was low and dangerous. She was attacked by 7 people in a sealed room. She defended herself with minimal force. If you put her in a cell, I will have the full weight of Earth's diplomatic corps on this academy within the hour. The security officer looked at Vethkan for support. Vethkan shook his head. She can stay in her quarters under observation, Vethkan said. That should satisfy procedure while respecting her rights as a victim. The officer did not look happy, but he agreed. They walked Kira back to her room through empty corridors. Word of the incident had spread, and students who had been returning from the ceremony stopped to stare. Some of them whispered. Some of them ran. Kira kept her eyes on the ground. At her door, she stopped and turned to Vethkan. "Thank you," she said, "for trying, for listening. I know you did what you could." "It was not enough." "No," she almost smiled. "But you tried. That is more than most people would do for a Deathworlder." She went inside and closed the door. Tor stayed in the corridor, his back against the wall, his eyes watching everything. He would stay there all night, knew. He would stay there until someone told him what was going to happen to his student. Returned to his office. He sat at his desk and pulled up the security footage from the greenhouse. He watched it once, twice, 10 times. Each time he noticed something new. The way had tried to leave before the violence started. The way she had asked them to stop. The way she had positioned herself to protect the plants behind her, even as she fought. The way she had checked each fallen body afterward, making sure they were still breathing. She was not a monster. She was a person who had been pushed beyond what any person should have to endure. But knew that did not matter. What mattered was what the evidence looked like to people who had already decided what humans were. He began preparing his testimony for the hearing. Outside his window, the 3 moons continued their slow dance across the sky. The conjunction would last for 3 more days, a beautiful alignment that happened only once in a lifetime. Did not look at it. He had other things to think about. In her room, lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She did not sleep. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw arm bending, heard Skeel's membrane tearing, felt the terrible satisfaction of her body doing what it was designed to do. She had trained for years to control her instincts. She had meditated and exercised and practiced until she could face any provocation without responding. She had believed she was in control. Now she knew the truth. The control was an illusion. The monster was always there, waiting just below the surface. And one day it would come out again. The only question was what would be left when it did. The hearing chamber was packed. Every seat was filled, and more people stood along the walls. News of the incident had spread across the station, and everyone wanted to see what would happen to the human. Sat alone at a small table in the center of the room. She wore her academy uniform, clean and pressed. Her hair was tied back. Her hands were folded in front of her. She looked very small. The committee sat above her on a raised platform. 7 judges from 7 different species, all of them staring down at her with expressions she could not read. Father spoke first. He was larger than his son, with scales that shimmered like oil on water. His voice filled the chamber. My son lies in a medical bay with his arm broken in 3 places. 6 other students were hospitalized because of this creature, he pointed at with one clawed finger. She is a danger to everyone in this academy. She must be expelled immediately, and criminal charges must be filed. The crowd murmured in agreement. She claimed she was defending herself, Father continued. But look at the evidence. 7 students against 1 human, 7 civilized beings against a single, and yet somehow the human walked away without a scratch. Does that sound like self-defense to you, or does that sound like a predator attacking its prey? More murmurs, some of them sounded angry. The evidence was presented. Security footage showed standing calmly before the attack, then moving in a blur of violence. Medical reports detailed every injury. Witness statements, given by the attackers themselves, described a monster with empty eyes and hands like weapons. No one mentioned that the door had been sealed. No one mentioned that had tried to leave. No one mentioned that she had asked them to stop. Then Tor stood. He introduced himself formally. Lieutenant Commander James Tors, Earth Defense Forces, now serving as cultural liaison to the Academy. His voice was calm and clear, and it carried to every corner of the chamber. "I would like to provide context," he said, "for those who have never been to Earth." He began to talk about their home, not the statistics that everyone knew, the gravity, the radiation, the dangerous wildlife. He talked about what it meant to grow up there. "Human children learn to identify poisonous plants before they can read," he said. "They learn which animals will run from them and which will attack. They learn to check their beds for venomous insects, to watch the sky for dangerous weather, to always, always know where the exits are." He paused. "We do not evolve by being weak. We evolve by being alert, by being careful, and by being able to fight when we have no other choice. Every human alive is descended from an unbroken line of survivors going back millions of years." The crowd was silent now. Spent 6 months training before she came to this academy. Not to fight, she already knew how to fight. She trained to stop fighting, to suppress every instinct that tells her to respond to threats, to move slowly, speak softly, and never, ever show aggression. He turned to face the committee. "Do you know what that is like? To spend every moment of every day holding back the thing inside you that wants to survive, to let people mock you and push you and threaten you, and to swallow your response every single time. That is what has done since she arrived here. That is what she was doing when 7 students sealed her in a room and told her they were going to hurt her." Tors pulled up the security footage and let it play again. But this time, he pointed out the details. "Watch her feet. She tries to move toward the door 3 times before the attack begins. Listen to her voice. She asks them to stop. She says please." He paused the footage on a frame showing face just before she moved. "Look at her eyes. That is not a monster. That is a person who knows exactly what she is capable of and is desperately trying not to do it." He let the footage continue. Frame by frame, he showed how had targeted non-lethal areas, how she had pulled her strikes at the last moment, how she had checked on each fallen attacker afterward. "Your son is alive because chose not to kill him," Tors said to Father. "Every one of those students is alive because a monster, as you called her, decided to show mercy." He looked at the committee. "I suggest you remember that." The chamber was absolutely silent. Was called to speak last. She stood slowly and faced the committee. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I know what you see when you look at me. I know what my planet's reputation is. I cannot change where I come from. I cannot change what evolution made me." She took a breath. "I came to this academy because I believe humans can be more than our instincts. I believe we can learn to live with other species, to work with them, to help them. That is still what I believe." She looked at the crowd, at all the faces that feared her or hated her or simply did not understand. "I am sorry for what happened. I wish it had never happened. But I will not apologize for surviving. I will not apologize for defending myself when I had no other choice." Her voice grew stronger. "If you expel me, I will go home. I will tell my people that the galaxy was not ready for us. And maybe that is true. Maybe it will be years or decades before we try again." She paused. "But I hope you will give me another chance. I hope you will let me prove that civilized species can learn to understand each other." She sat down. The vote took less than an hour. It was close, 4 against expulsion, 3 in favor. Instructor cast the deciding vote. Would stay. The months that followed were not easy. Some students avoided her completely. Others watched her with fascination, like she was an exhibit in a museum, never spoke to her again. But slowly things began to change. It started with a student who sat next to her in class, then a who asked about human biology for a research project, then more, one by one, drawn by curiosity or courage. Answered their questions honestly. She talked about Earth, its dangers, yes, but also its beauty. The blue oceans, the green forests, the endless creativity of a species that had survived everything their world could throw at them. She talked about what it meant to be the fear, the vigilance, the constant struggle to control instincts that screamed for violence. And she talked about choice, the choice to be more than evolution intended. When she presented her final thesis, the audience hall was full. Her topic was conflict resolution, drawing on humanity's long history of turning enemies into allies. The committee gave her the highest marks in her class. On graduation day, younger sister approached her. She was smaller than her brother, with scales that shifted from green to gold. "I want to understand," the girl said. "Can you teach me?" Kira smiled, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. "I can try." Tors came back for the ceremony. Before he left again, he gave Kira a small wooden pendant carved in the shape of a wolf. "They are going to tell stories about you," he said. "Make sure they are the right ones." Instructor Vethkon watched Kira leave the graduation hall, surrounded by friends. A Velari, 2 Korath, even a Mhori whose pressure suit bumped gently against her shoulder. She had come to the academy as a monster. She was leaving as something else entirely. Not a weapon, not a victim. A bridge. And Vethkon knew that the galaxy would never be the same.